Uh, Good morning and sorry. When we talk about physics and laws of physics, uh, the first thing that we have to remember is beyond all laws of physics, what works is Murphy's law. Something can go wrong, it goes. And sorry for the loss of time. Let's start moving ahead quickly. Okay, can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so this is going to be the plan. Move ahead. We'll go to the we'll go to pinhole camera. Next one. Next one. So we'll talk about what is the principle of image formation. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so if I ask a question, which of the rays will reach from O to I first? O is the object on left hand side, I is the image, and the rays are passing through the lens. Okay, naturally what we observe here is that the ray number 1 will have to travel very long distance, ray number 3 will have to travel small distance. Okay, but then we need to bother about what is going to reach first. Okay, next. But you see here, the ray number 3 goes through the thickest part of the lens, and inside the glass, speed of light is less. And naturally, therefore, it is going to have a delay. Interestingly, what happens, the lens is designed in such a way, or it so happens, that all the rays take exactly same amount of time. And therefore, next, all of them reach from O to I in same time, and they all meet therefore in the phase, and that is the basic principle behind image formation, that all the rays should meet in phase so that image can be easily formed. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, here is a parabola. Okay, and parabola has mathematical property that every point on a parabola is equidistant from a line called directrix and a point called focus. So if you take any point over here, the distance from F and distance from directrix is exactly same. Now imagine a set of parallel beam is coming down. Okay, all of the set of parallel beam means in a wavefront they will all have same phase, so they are all going to move together down from top to bottom. Okay, but suppose we keep a parabolic mirror in between, what is going to happen? It is going to get reflected. Okay, if we not even bother about the Snell's law, okay, what we can see here is if all these points meet at point F, okay, then instead of traveling the distance all the way to directrix, they are going to travel the same distance in the same medium to point F, and therefore all of them are going to be in the same phase, and therefore this entire parallel beam is going to make a single focus, or all of them will meet at point F, and that's the basic idea of focus for a parabola. Okay, now unfortunately we don't use parabolic surfaces in case of lenses. Okay, in camera we use spherical surfaces. Okay, so let's go to the next point. So parabolic mirror will have a single focus, very nice single focus, because all of them are going to come at the same time in the same phase. Next slide, please. So what about spherical mirrors? So we can assume sphere as approximation of a parabola. Next. So we have got this set of equations, and we can approximately show that as you move away from the center, okay, the approximation that spherical surface can be approximated as parabola does not hold good. So at sufficiently large distances, okay, the spherical mirrors surely behave differently than parabola, and therefore that is where when the rays are going to meet at very large distance from the center on a lens, okay, they are going to meet at a different point. They will not meet at the same focus F. Okay, that's why we have problems when the moment you start using spherical surfaces. Next, please. Okay, so what we have then is what we call spherical aberration. So if there are parallel beam of light comes, okay, and near the center, all of them are going to meet at larger distance, larger point F, whereas if the rays are at margin of the lens, okay, or called marginal rays, they are all going to meet closer to the lens. So the point closer to the, so therefore the focus is not going to be well-defined single point. It is going to be a small range, okay, and that is going to cause a problem when it comes to formation of image. And therefore what typically people do is they will avoid the rays coming from margin of a lens. Now you may say, if you want to avoid rays coming from margin of a lens, okay, why would you make a big lens? You may make a small lens. But then we need big lenses because for different reasons. We'll see how all these things can be taken care. Of course, we are not going to go into the details of how this is taken care, because you need multiple lens systems, and the entire camera industry, okay, has worked on avoiding these spherical and other kind of aberrations. There are in fact 4 kind of aberrations or defects we have. There is something called spherical aberration that we just now saw. Then there is something called coma, when the rays are coming at an angle. Okay, they will meet at they in the same focal plane, they will not get focused. Okay, also there are for oblique angles, there are what you call the other kind of defects introduced. For example, the focal plane, which we expect to be a flat, is not flat. It becomes a curve, and naturally you are not going to have a sensor put on the curve. Okay, and so that is another effect that you have. And there's one more effect called astigmatism, which means the rays spread along one direction in one plane and another direction in another plane, okay, by different amount. So all these 4 major defects one can avoid or minimize by taking different lens combinations, and that's the whole study of optics. And that's why all cameras are very expensive, because a lot of research has gone into that, a lot of calculations have gone into that. Then you need to bother about the material out of which you're going to make lens, because different colors are bent by different amount in a medium, and therefore you want to avoid white light mixing into different colors. So that is called chromatic aberration. You want to avoid all those things. We'll not go into those details, and that becomes an entire course, but we'll see some interesting features of camera when some of these things you have avoided. Next slide, please. So after avoiding most of those things, what still remains is what you call distortion. And there are mainly 2 kinds of distortion: barrel distortion, pincushion distortion. For most mobile users, this barrel distortion you must have experienced. On the left hand side, for example, you see it is almost like a squares which are printed on a paper. Okay, only at the edges you see that it becomes curved, whereas on the right hand side you see the effect very enhanced. And why that is happening? I have written focal length over here, 4.6 millimeters. This is for Samsung mobile camera. And on the right hand side, the focal length is 1.4 mm. So we'll see later that when focal length becomes smaller and smaller, okay, basically you are looking at a wide angle. And moment you start going for wider and wider angles, okay, you have this problem of distortion coming into picture. So this barrel distortion mainly is observed in wide angle, and all of you can try with those kind of things using mobile camera. A lot of experiments can be done. Move to the next slide, please. Next one, we'll talk about some of the technical specifications. When you want to write, we saw that photography is nothing but photo means light and graphy is writing. So when you want to write using light, too much of light is bad. That will create overexposed image, as you can see on the left hand side, or too less light is bad, because it is going to cause underexposed image, which you can see on the right hand side. Okay, so overexposed and underexposed images you want to avoid, and therefore you need to decide how much light should appropriately come. Now, of course, there are sensors in the camera which decide but basically there is going to be a logic. Okay, and all the time you are not going to depend only on the sensor, for a simple reason that there are artistic reasons where you may want to purposely do certain things which sensors can't understand. Let's go to the next slide. So first thing is shutter speed. How long you are going to keep the shutter open so that light comes in. Now, then there are numbers given, something like 1 by 800, 1 by 250, 1 by 100. What does that mean? So 1 by 800 implies shutter is open for 100, 1 by 800th of a second. 1 by 200 implies shutter is open for 1 by 200th of a second. And that is going to naturally 4 times greater time, and therefore it is going to collect 4 times more light. Okay, and there are cameras where you can have setting even that goes for minutes. So you may keep shutter open for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Okay, and there is on all DSLR cameras there is one particular setting called B or bulb, which means you keep the button pressed and shutter will remain open. Moment you release the button, the shutter will close. So for capturing high speed motion, actually one need to keep high shutter speed, because otherwise that entire blur will come. We'll see in some of the images later. Next slide, please. So you see here, for example, I've taken two pictures over here. The left hand side picture has exposure of 1/100th of a second. The other settings are kept fixed. So there is f by 40 in ISO 100. We'll talk about those numbers later. Okay, on the right hand side, the exposure is 1/800. So you see 8 times less light is coming, and naturally you see the picture becomes relatively dark. So keeping all other settings same, what we are having is the left hand side is a good bright image, the right hand side is underexposed image. Next slide, please. Then we go to aperture. Aperture is how much of the lens you're going to expose, how much of the lens you're going to keep open. Aperture of the camera is basically size of the hole that is going to allow the light to pass through the lens system. Next one. So it gives, now it is generally given in a form of f-stop number. So say for example, if stop number is 3.5, what does it mean? It means the ratio of focal length and the aperture is 3.5. So the focal length of the lens divided by aperture, the diameter which is open, is 3.5. Now, naturally, when f number becomes larger, what it means is the aperture is becoming smaller and smaller. And when what is to be remembered is when f number becomes smaller, the aperture is you are opening wider and wider thing. You're not going to change the focal length of the lens most of the times. Okay, you're going to decide how much of the aperture you're going to open. So larger aperture would mean smaller f-stop number, and smaller aperture would mean larger f-stop number. Okay, so larger aperture, as you can see a point over here, larger aperture lens allows good phase matching only for certain distances. Okay, we say that the depth of the image reduces. Okay, it does not give the same depth everywhere. Now see, let's go to the next slide. Okay, this is not the exact actual use for changing f-stop. I'll come to that, but let's look at the basic two differences. Keeping the same exposure or shutter speed of 1/500, keeping same ISO number, which we'll talk later. Okay, what we have is we have on left hand side f-stop number 5.6 and right hand side is 22. As I said, f-stop number is larger, it means the aperture is smaller, and when the aperture is smaller, less amount of light is going to come. So naturally, you see the right hand side, the image is not very bright. Now this is not actually the use of aperture, but at times we should know that as you change the size of the aperture, okay, this is also what is going to happen. Okay, and therefore, in order to keep the same amount of intensity, you will also have to change simultaneously some other settings. Let us go to the next slide. Okay, this is a real usage of f-stop number. If you see, when f-stop here is 5, which means the aperture is relatively largely open, and then what happens is the flowers here or the leaves over here in front are more nicely focused as compared to the leaves behind. Okay, on the back row, the leaves or the flowers are not in well focused, whereas in front row they are well focused. That's because the f-stop is larger. So when you are allowing more light to come, the paraxial rays, marginal rays, large amount of rays are going to come. Okay, you need to decide at what distance the rays are going to get focused, or the rays from which particular distance will be focused on the film or on the sensors. And moment the aperture is large, what is going to happen is this distance decreases. Let's now remember the setting here. It is f5. Okay, exposure ISO numbers we are going to keep same, and I'll change f5 to another number. Let us go to the next slide. So it is f25. It is 5 times. Okay, and then what you observe here, 5 times f number means 5 times smaller aperture, and relatively the image on the back row is also relatively more focused. If you can go to back slide, please, again. So one should be able to see the difference. And then next slide. Here it is more clear on the back row. Now this effect can be very much enhanced. In the next slide, you will see what is the actual use. Typically, when you are capturing a macro. Macro means something which is kept very close, and you want to take, for example, left-hand side picture. I want to focus only the fish. The background is not focused here. Okay, the fish is completely focused. The background is not focused. So we say the depth is very small, and this is possible when you keep large aperture. Okay, or very small f-stop number. On the right hand side, you see the road here, the trees here, even the clouds and even the mountain there. Okay, everything is well focused. So this is with very small aperture. Now, what it can be the smallest aperture? Moment you start making aperture smaller and smaller and smaller, ultimately you come to pinhole camera. And pinhole camera is the best camera where everything is focused on the screen. Okay, irrespective of where the object is placed. So effectively, when you are going for very small aperture or large f-stop number, you are going towards pinhole effect. Okay, you are allowing light to only pass through a small hole so that all the nearby rays which are coming, okay, they are almost traveling in the same amount of time. There is not much of a difference in the path, and therefore they come in phase and they get focused from wherever they are coming. So all the rays coming from any particular object kept at any distance, okay, will get focused moment it is passing through the pinhole. And that's the basic principle that we can use over here, especially when you are clicking a landscape or you want everything in the same shot. All old days hotshot cameras typically would give you this kind of effect because the aperture generally would be small. Whereas the photograph on the left hand side, okay, this kind of effect is possible only if you have camera where you can aperture can be very large, okay, and then therefore you are reducing the depth, that which means you can focus on this particular object and you don't want other objects to be in focus. Now this is mainly done for artistic purposes. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So and we pause for some questions based on whatever we did, and then we can go further. Are there any questions? Are there any questions on the chat or?
So there's one question that says that how does the camera take care of aberration?
Okay, how does the camera take care of aberration means basically how does the camera manufacturer takes care of aberrations? What is done is I talked about 4 different aberrations: spherical aberration, coma, astigmatism, and curvature of focal plane. All these are taken along with that chromatic aberration. All these are taken care by using not single lens but using multiple lens system. And moment you start changing the curvature of lens, I mean, normally when we talk about lens, we talk about a nice nice lens which is biconvex lens where the radius of curvature on both sides is same. But this is not what is actually done. You may use biconvex lens, but the radius of curvature on both sides could be different. And depending on how much is just change, okay, the amount of spherical aberration changes. So amount of spherical aberration can be modified. Similarly, amount of coma and astigmatism can be modified by taking different lens combination, not by one single lens. Okay. In BSc, for example, we study lens system. I just want to specify because this is physics we are talking about, and there are many physics students over here. So I would specify. I mean, I want to emphasize on this particular thing that in BSc physics, for example, we talk about lens system where we talk about just 2 lenses kept at certain distance, and typically we take the 2 focal lengths almost same, slightly maybe different, and then you talk about what are principal planes, what are focal planes, and so on. Imagine where this is going to be useful. This is going to be useful in a camera. You want to use a very long lens of a camera. You might have seen the telephoto lens cameras, okay? Whereas one lens surely is sitting very close to very close to the camera, because otherwise the center of gravity will have a problem, okay? And the camera thickness is not very large. So what you can see is the lens can have focal length something like 200 millimeter, 400 millimeter, 500 millimeter. But the focus on the other side where the image should be forming is very close. It could be just 35 mm. How is that done? So that is done when you start using different lenses of different curvatures. Okay, so you may use even a convex lens and a concave lens, and you may shift in such a way that the focal plane is shifted towards very close to L2. Okay, so we don't bother about in this case where the principal plane is and so on. You may have to bother about where the principal plane is moment you want to keep what we call the shutter. Okay, so all these things become very essential while designing a camera, and that's why the optics of camera is very expensive, because a lot of research goes into that.
Okay, sir.
Shall
There's
we go?
one more question that says
Yes.
that pinhole camera. You just spoke about pinhole camera, sir. How
Right.
do you take care of diffraction in such a camera?
Okay, good question. In case of pinhole camera, diffraction is going to be there, but if you look at the diffraction, and if you look at the size of the hole, then you don't keep size of the hole very small, first of all, because moment you make the hole very small, what is going to happen is the diffraction effect is going to be enhanced. Okay, so what one does is, there is one general knowledge question one can ask: what should be the size of pinhole camera, or what should be the shape of hole? Okay, so when we say pinhole, what we mean is it should be a very small hole. Okay, we are not talking about what is the shape of the hole. The shape could be square, shape could be triangular, it could be anything. As I said, okay, just by using your hand, you can make a pinhole. Okay, so you are not going to ensure that this is going to be exactly circular. What is important is you are not going to allow light to come from very large path differences. That's where all the nearby rays are going to get focused. So by having slightly larger pinhole, diffraction effect can be minimized. That is number one. Can I have 5 centimeter big mirror acting as a pinhole? Yes, it is possible. You can take 5 centimeter mirror and take the sunlight, reflect it at a very long distance, and moment the distance becomes very large. Okay, when I say very large, one needs to do the calculation, like what is the angle of the sun and at what angle it is going to go. Okay, so something like if I go to something like 25 meters, at that distance, whatever light is going to fall on the wall due to this 5 centimeter mirror is still going to behave like a pinhole camera. Okay, so pinhole camera can be as large as that also, and you can minimize diffraction effect thereby.
Okay, sir. So there's one last question we'll ask.
Yeah,
that
sure.
Can aberrations be completely cleared?
Aberrations can't be completely cleared. What is done is you can minimize aberrations, and these days a lot of things, like when you start using mobile camera where you don't have much of margin for lens to move, a lot of software is used to handle the phase, and a lot of software is also used to manipulate the images. So aberrations completely can't be cleared, not possible. A lot of money people have put in to do that. They have minimized, and in spite of doing all those things, for wide angle lenses, the barrel distortion still remains. So that's it.
Thank you, sir. We can just continue with the session, and then we'll take the remaining questions at the end of the talk.
Sure. Let's go to the next slide then. Okay, so we come to the third aspect. We talked about shutter, we talked about f-stop, and we come to the third aspect, which is ISO, or it is equivalent to ASA number, which used to be given in the film. It is basically a standardization. This number is also called speed of the film. So higher the number, lower the write requirement. It means what are the typical numbers? So you may have ISO 60, 100, 200, 400, 800, 600. What it means is ISO 100, you will need more light. ISO 200, half the amount of light is sufficient. ISO 400, 1/4 light is sufficient. ISO 1600, 1/16th light is sufficient. Lower the number is preferred, is referred as slow film, and a higher number is called fast film. But slower the film is, or in this case sensors are, okay, what is going to happen is the resolution is better. Now when it comes to film, it was about the chemical processes. When it comes to ISO number in the digital sensors, we are talking about actually amplification. Okay, so say whatever light is falling on the sensor, okay, that further can be amplified. So when you amplify it by double the amount, the ISO number doubles. When you amplify it 10 times, ISO number will become 10 times. Of course, there are certain standards where you don't go 10 times, you may go in step of 2. Okay, let's go and see the effect actually. Let's go to the next slide. Here, left hand side and right hand side, the left hand side image is ISO 200, okay, and it is exposed for 1 full second in the low light condition. The right hand side image is ISO 300, 3200, 3200, okay, which is 16 times greater, and therefore exposure should be 16 times smaller. But generally, cameras may not have 1/16 exposure; it had 1/15 exposure, and you see the intensities are same. But you look at the quality on the right hand side. The quality of the image is not very good. Though you have amplified whatever light was falling, because you kept the exposure for very small amount of time, okay, whatever noise is going to come, okay, that noise also will get amplified. Now there are different kind of noise available on the sensor. So there are certain kind of pixels which may just sense, or which may have a leakage, and they will give bright spot. So those are called hot pixels. And especially when you use camera for longer time, what happens is because it is electronic component and you are using it for a long time, circuitry becomes hot, and then the leakages increases because you are talking about semiconductor devices. And then there are going to be points where those particular electronic sensors are going to be more active, or they are going to give more current or more voltage, okay, and therefore they will show up as hot pixels. They are called hot pixels. Whereas so we can clearly see over here that under low light condition, yes, you have no option, you may increase ISO, but as long as sufficient amount of light is available for a good quality picture, you have to go for smaller ISO number because it has got finer grain or better resolution. Let us go to the next slide. So when we talk about these three aspects, okay, the ISO number, the shutter speed, and aperture, let us look at this particular circle. Now, how does one remember? So when you use ISO number, okay, the smaller ISO number, it will have less noise on left hand side, whereas as you go towards right hand side, the image will become brighter and brighter. But moment you go to very large ISO number, there's going to be a lot of noise. Similarly, on the right hand side incline, if you look at what is shown here is shutter speed. Okay, so at the bottom, the shutter speed is very, very high. It means 1/1000 of a second shutter will be open. Okay, and as you move upwards, it is 1/8. Now, because shutter is going to be open for longer duration, the image is going to be brighter. But for what purpose I am going to use this will decide how much shutter speed I'll keep. If I want somebody who's running and I want a clear picture, then I'll keep the shutter for very short amount of time. Okay, if I keep the shutter open for long amount of time, as seen on the top right hand side, okay, you will see the motion blur. Now, third aspect is on left hand side incline, which is aperture. Okay, so you keep very small aperture or large f-stop number. The field of view is deep. Okay, deep means what? That person is also focused. The mountains are also focused. Okay, but as you come down, the aperture is going to be wider and wider open. F-stop number is going to become smaller and smaller, and because aperture is going to be open wider and wider, the image is going to be brighter. But at the same time, what is going to happen is the depth is going to change, which means you may focus that person and you may forget about the background. The background will not be very sharp, or one may decide to focus on a background and the person may not be sharp. So one has to decide what you want. It is called a shallow depth field. Okay. Now, suppose I want to have, I want to decide certain kind of settings. Now, what do I do? Say, for example, I'm interested in a person who is standing steady and I want a clear picture with the background also clear. If I want to do that, I want a background also clear, means I have decided what should be the f-stop number. It should be very, very small. But now smaller f-stop number here at the top shows that the image is not going to be very bright. The person is going to be at rest. So I can achieve that brightness by by reducing the shutter speed, because the person is at rest. So I don't have problem of motion blur. Okay, so I may keep very small aperture and I may keep shutter open for a long time. Okay, and if I have got more and more light available, then what I can do is I can keep smaller ISO number, which means it will have less noise. But suppose I want to capture a person who is running, which means I'm constrained now that I have to use fast shutter. But fast shutter implies that brightness is going to be less. So I have to increase brightness by other methods. Either it will be by increasing the aperture or by taking larger ISO number. Now, if I increase the aperture, you see the shallow depth is going to be there. So, so only that person can be focused. If that is what you expect, then it is fine. Then you can increase the total amount of light by increasing the aperture, keeping the fast shutter speed, so that that running person will come without much of a blur. Okay, and the background will not be very clear. Okay, and you can get good capture even with smaller ISO number, less noise. So depending on what are your requirements, one has to keep in mind all these things. Simultaneously, you can't randomly choose things, because every time you go one step further, you need to, in order to keep the same amount of light, you need to adjust something else by equal amount. And that's where those particular numbers become useful. And that is where the memory of photographer or the insight that he develops becomes useful. Let us go to the next slide, please. Here the things are okay. So I have mentioned the same things over here. Okay, but here the same thing, instead of in a triangle, they are put in a straight line. So you see aperture plate here. You see the speed that if it is low speed shutter, then you will see the motion blur, and similarly ISO number. So you see very high ISO number will also introduce a lot of noise. Let's go to the next. What will be the size of the image? Who decides the size of the image? You see, if you look at this formula, size of the image on a sensor will be angular size into focal length. Okay, I mean, that's a simple geometry. So angular size, therefore, of the image is going to be image size upon focal length. But image size is decided by the sensor. The sensor image size can't be greater than the sensor. So moment the sensor is decided, okay, what happens is, depending on what focal length you use, the angular size of the object will change. It might become small, it might become large, okay, depending on what focal length you use. Let us see that in two pictures next. Next slide, please. Yeah, so here a picture is taken and the focal length is 84 mm for that particular camera. Okay, let's not right now bother about the other numbers, because we are only going to change the focal length here. Okay, so focal length is 84, and what you observe in the picture is there is a flower here, there are other leaves here, there are flowers over here, and so on. Okay, so you get a nice broad view of a picture. Okay, go to the next slide. From 84 mm, you have gone to 232 mm. Okay, almost 4 times larger, and what you are observing is the angle reduced. Okay, so the focal length increased, the angle reduced, because frame is same. The sensor frame is same, and therefore you are able to zoom in. Now this is the language you use. We zoom in. So basically, what you are doing is you are increasing the focal length. Now that's where if you have seen the cricket matches, okay, there are cameramen with very huge long telephoto lens, okay, or what we call zoom lens. So you see the focal length is very large. The large focal length means what? You are capturing a very small angle, and that can be magnified nicely, because that small angle you are putting in the same entire sensor frame. Okay, whereas if I take smaller focal length, naturally I am going to get a wider angle, and therefore lot of things are going to be put in the same frame. Next. So you see in camera, mobile camera, for example, there are cameras where you have multiple settings. So left hand side image is taken with 4.6 mm focal length, okay, and the right hand side image is taken with 1.42 mm. Now this is wide angle, okay, the right hand side. So you see the left hand side image is actually sitting here in this square box, okay. Now if you look at this ratio is actually 3 times, which means in reality the right hand side image should have been 3 times wider. Yes, that is possible, but because there are limitations of the sensor, what happens is whatever sensor can capture, only that much is available. Now this particular picture is cropped for square box, okay. So if you had a rectangle and different aspect ratio means length to breadth ratio. So length, what is standard length to breadth ratio? In old photograph it was 3:2, okay. Then later people started using 4:3. Then there are people, many monitors come nowadays 16:9. Okay, so there are different kind of aspect ratios people use, or 1:1. Now here it is 1:1. Okay, so moment I use the longer length also, then you may be able to see that the entire length available for this picture is 3 times. Okay, in this particular box, the breadth being fixed of the sensor, okay, we are only getting half the, double the frame in case of smaller focal length. So wide angle camera basically needs small focal length. Okay, all mobile cameras therefore are wide angle, and therefore in mobile camera you generally will not find to zoom in something. Okay, it is difficult. You may have to digitally zoom in, but optical zooming in is not possible with with mobile cameras, because there is not much of a margin where you can increase the focal length. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, we talk about filters. Now filters are something that improves quality of images depending on what you want. Let's go to first slide. Yeah, here you see this is a picture taken without any kind of filter, typically in a cricket ground, and you see generally this is what we take pictures, but what pictures come in good magazines are something different. Okay, so what is happening here? There are rays, in ultraviolet rays, which camera can sense, we can't sense, are present around. Similarly, if you take a picture of, say, sky, okay, the sky may look blue, but when you click it with camera, it will appear white, because that ultraviolet rays which are coming, okay, they may just wash out, or they may saturate your sensors, and our eyes are not able to see them, and therefore though they might be in small amount, but our eyes are not able to see them, but camera will be able to sense them, and therefore what happens is this ultraviolet also adds brightness into the picture. Okay, now this lot of background noise, it's not actually noise, it is lot of white light coming, the brightness has increased because of ultraviolet. Now there are two ways you can correct this. Okay, next slide please. Here it is software processed. Okay, in software what you have done is you have sensed what is the total amount of lights, and by adjusting the total amount, by looking at the total amount of light, you try to adjust the brightness and contrast accordingly. Okay, or there's something called mid-tone setting. Okay, so by adjusting mid-tone, basically you can avoid this kind of the background whiteness. Okay, so that is software processing. You have not changed the original amount of light coming into your camera. That remains the same, but after printing or after digitizing that image, you can do the software processing. But if I use UV filter, let us go to the next slide. Of course, it is not the same shot, because you can't take the same shot, this live event here. Okay, but here you see no software processing is done. Just UV filter is put, and then lot of ultraviolet background noise has been reduced. And you can see the clarity of the picture as compared to 2 slides back. Okay, if you can go 2 slides back, this one, and 2 slides front ahead. Yeah, this one. So you see the clarity. Okay, and this is possible because of UV filter. Similar kind of thing happens when you use UV filter. The sky will look more blue, the way we see it. Okay, but camera, the normal camera may not be able to see it. Let's go to another filter. Next one. This is the polarizing filter. Okay, here polarizing filter is not used. And what you observe here is from the ground, from this floor here, a lot of reflection is coming. Now, suppose you want to avoid that. You may want to avoid reflection from glass. Okay, you are clicking a picture of a building and there is a glass and that glass is reflecting a lot of light. Now, we know from physics that all reflected light from non-metallic surfaces are polarized, or are at least partially polarized. So one can put a polarizing filter. Basically, what you are doing is you are putting a polarizer in front of a lens, okay, and adjust the polarizer so that you can avoid the glare coming from this reflection. Go to the next slide, please. See here, the floor is not reflecting now. Okay, why? Because you have used polarizing filter and that glare, that light has been cut. You will also see simultaneously there is small change in the background. Just go to the earlier slide. Okay, here you see, for example, in the bright sunlight, you can't see very details of the, on right hand side, the bright sunlight, you can't see details of leaves. Okay, some part of that light also can be cut, and you see the green will look greener when you go to when you start using polarizing filter. Next slide. See, now the green is greener, the effect of sunlight partly reduces, and I mean, even the image quality enhances. So it is not only for avoiding the glare, it is also for avoiding or minimizing light so that you can have better clarity in the picture. So avoiding glare can be done with polarizing filter. Next one. We come to sensors. Most of the cameras are these days use digital sensors called CMOS, or complementary metal oxide semiconductor, FET, field effect transistor sensors. CMOS FET sensors, they are called CMOS sensors. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is the basic CMOS sensor design. What is, let me explain quickly how this works. So what you have is PD is basically photodiode. Okay, so the light, whatever light comes, okay, it is going to fall on photodiode and it is going to give some amount of current. Okay, now there is one particular FET which is M4, okay, which will be used for transferring. So when you moment you give a signal, whatever light is collected by this photodiode will be given to this capacitor, whatever voltage, okay, I mean, whatever current will be generated in a photodiode, okay, it will start, the capacitor will charge and the voltage will be generated across this CFD, okay, or floating capacitor. Now, if you do the reset, what is going to happen is the capacitor may get directly connected to VDD, okay, or it may discharge. But moment you do the select, okay, this M2 and M3 basically act as the amplifier, and moment you give the signal to select, this capacitor voltage will be given to the bus, which is readout bus, which means basically you will be able to record that particular light. So when you are creating an image, okay, or you are giving that image in a form of bit, you are storing that in an image in a form of bit in the memory, or you are giving that image to the screen, then that particular, I mean, whatever light has created current and whatever that voltage is ultimately stored in the capacitor will be ultimately read out, and accordingly that particular point will become bright or less bright and so on. Okay, go to the next slide. Now this is basic sensor. Okay, it does not check which color it is. Human eye also has, I mean, we see colors with the help of 3 different sensors called cone cells. Okay, there are S, M, and L. Basically, M and L together also gives you the amount of intensity information. Okay, so these 3 sensors, red, green, and blue, I mean, one peaks somewhere around yellow or more in red color, it senses. Another one sees mainly in green color, and third one sees mainly in blue color, blue or violet color. So that's why we say the 3 primary colors are red, green, and blue. Okay, by mixture of them in correct order or in appropriate order, you can generate any kind of color. So whatever color we are seeing is basically the 3 sensors in our eye, okay, are manipulating that particular data and sending that information to the brain, and we interpret different colors. Camera does exactly same. Next slide, please. So here what you have is each sensor, each pixel or picture cell, okay, has got basically, you can see there is 4 squares. One square is for red filter, one square is used for blue filter, and 2 squares are mainly used for green filter, because our eyes have better sensitivity for green color. Okay, so exactly to simulate that, okay, for your electronics, you have one-fourth part of a pixel is sensing red, one-fourth part is sensing blue, and half part is sensing green. Okay, so all our pixels are designed this way. Next slide, please. Now we are coming to the last part. When we are talking about camera, which camera is good, okay, or mobile cameras, when people talk about, people generally talk about megapixel. I have how much? 48 megapixel camera, or somebody may have 24 megapixel camera, or something like that. Okay, now we naturally feel that larger the megapixel, better resolution I'm going to have, but that is not the case. It could be misleading. Cameras, all cameras, the sensor, the basic sensor that we saw, they are not same size. The entire plate, of course, that we see is also not of same size. Smaller sensors also mean smaller focal. Now you see here, over here, okay, the full frame old generation films used to be 35 mm films. This full frame sensor, single center along with large number of pixels in it, okay, will be something like 36 mm by 24 mm. Basically, it is going to be in the ratio of 3:2. But there are other cameras, many companies, they come with smaller and smaller sensors. So their entire sensor plate is going to be smaller than the full frame. So it may not be this 36 mm by 24 mm, it could be smaller, and all those numbers are written over here. Now these numbers, say for example 1 by 2.3 inches, is not actually this size or even the size of diagonal. It means this is basically the size of the circle of light, okay, which is going to fall on the sensor, and then sensor is going to pick up the image at the central part of that entire circle. Okay, so this one aspect one has to remember. Also, one has to see that within this entire large sensor, I may put large number of small pixels, or I may put small number of large pixels. So if I have got 2 cameras, one with say 24 megapixel but on mobile, and another with 24 megapixel but DSLR. Okay, DSLR is going to generate better picture. Why? Not because though megapixel numbers are same, okay, the total net sensor of that DSLR camera is going to be larger. Now, because sensor is going to be large, it is going to collect more amount of light. Because sensor is going to be large, okay, more amount of light will be required so that it becomes saturated, which means it has a lot of margin, okay, to show different kind of shades, and that and different kind of colors, and different kind of different features, the combination of colors. So but simultaneously, moment that happens, there is an effect on the focal length that you start using. Take for example, I'm looking at a picture at say 10-degree angle. Okay, some object is at 10-degree angle. Now I know what is going to be the lateral size on the sensor, the 10-degree multiplied by the focal length. But if the sensor itself is smaller, actual sensor is smaller, to fit that image in a smaller sensor, okay, I will, small focal length is going to be sufficient. So moment the size of the sensor reduces, the effective focal length required to cover the entire field of view also reduces. And therefore, many times when people talk about focal length, they talk about effective focal length, not actually the focal length of the lens. When I say effective focal length, means if originally you had used full frame sensor, what focal length it would have required, that number is generally given. And therefore, I mean, when you start looking from physics point of view, initially it could be slightly confusing, but it is best for photographers because they don't have to really bother about angle calculation, all those things. They will just remember that I am used to this particular device. For this particular device, for this kind of frame, okay, I will use this kind of setting or this kind of focal length. Now I have got another device, okay, but I have remembered that number, and therefore equivalent to that number I have to use setting. So they don't have to really bother about what goes inside. We as physicists, we as physics students can really start thinking about these different aspects. Okay, yeah. So next, I just want to acknowledge these people, all the photographs that I had put, comparative photographs, whereby my students, Ms. Smriti Bhujbal and Pranas Suresh, he was also my student. Now he is training, he's a photography trainer, and he trains at National Institute of Photography. So he has also given me good amount of insights, and he provided me his photographs with filters. And Mr. Shreyas Dongre, who is a professional photographer, with whom I have interacted multiple times, and I developed. I mean, he shared with me his insights. He's an artist. I mean, he doesn't look at it as a science tool. I look at it as a science tool. So when two different people come together, the knowledge grows. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for such an informative and interesting session. We now begin with a question and answer session. There are a couple of questions that has come. The first one is, in the mobile camera, all the parameters are automatically set?
Not all mobile cameras. There are, I mean, there are these days smartphones have available. They have certain settings available, so you can choose what ISO number you want. You can also choose at times what kind of shutter speed you want, or many times shutter speed is not given to you, but ISO number surely is given to you, and many times they also give you what f-stop you may want to use. So there are good smartphone cameras available with multiple features. All DSLR camera have all sorts of settings. DSLR camera also have a manual setting, which means you can manually adjust each of the parameters. And there are modes like aperture priority mode, which means you can set aperture. Other things are automatically set, sensing the light. Or you may have shutter speed mode, where you choose the shutter speed, other parameters will be automatically selected.
Okay, thank you, sir. The next question reads that how focal length, that is the zoom in, zoom out factor, related with blurred picture?
Okay, focal length is not actually related to the blurred picture. When we are looking at the settings, what is related is the aperture size. Okay, so focal length will decide the angle of field of view. Okay, if the focal length is smaller, then you have wider angle. If focal length is large, then you have smaller angle. So focal length will mainly decide the zooming in, zooming out, not blurring. Aperture will decide the blurring, because moment you make small aperture, everything is going to be focused. As I said, it is going to be pinhole effect. But moment the aperture is made wider, okay, the different rays coming from different distances are not going to come in the same phase. Especially if the object is close by, then you start using that simple the equation for lengths, that 1 by v is 1 by u plus 1 by f, and then for certain distance of object the image will be well focused. At other distances it won't be focused. But most of the other objects, I'm talking about macro photography, which means the objects are kept very close by. Okay, typically when people go for shooting flowers, okay, in the garden, that generally object is kept close by. So here you can use that 1 by v is 1 by u plus 1 by f. Otherwise, for most of the objects, if you look at the focal length, it's something like 35 mm. Okay, the objects are a so large distance that everything is effectively forming image at the focal plane. So for distant objects, we don't bother about 1 by v is 1 by u plus 1 by f. Only for macro we bother, and that is where larger aperture creates blur for other distances.
Okay, thank you, sir. We take the last question now. That which sensor is better, CMOS or CCD?
Both sensors have their advantages and disadvantages. CMOS in last 15 years has overtaken CCD. So now almost all people, including astrophotographers, use CMOS. So CCD is effectively obsolete now.
Okay. I once again thank you, sir, for a very interesting session and so patiently answering all the questions.
And let me apologize for lot of time wastage.
Yeah, the technical issues are beyond our power. Okay, I would now like to request my colleague, Dr. Vinod Pancha, to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Miss. Good morning to everyone. Now coming to the conclusion of today's webinar, I would like to propose a vote of thanks. It gives me great pleasure to extend my deepest gratitude to Mr. Mahesh Shetty sir for giving us his precious time despite personal and work commitments and delivering such a wonderful and informative webinar. I also thank our principal Dr. Vikas Vaidya for motivation and support. Special thanks to our HOD, Malika ma'am, for her support and inputs. I also thank member of physics department for planning and organizing this webinar. I also thank our computer science faculty, Mr. Mudassar, for all the technical help that is being provided. I also thank student volunteers for their hard work and support. Lastly, but most importantly, on behalf of all my colleagues, I express my deepest gratitude and thank our founder sir, Principal Lakdawala, for providing us a strong foundation platform on which we all are standing and enjoying the growth and glory. A big appreciation and thanks to all participants for participating and posing so many important questions to make this webinar a great success. The feedback link will be provided on YouTube as well as WhatsApp group for your feedback, and it will be active for 1 month. Thank you everyone.